Good evening. I'm your new superintendent, Eric Melby, and I thank you for tuning in to another one of our popular and timely community engagement live virtual events that are designed to keep you informed and engaged with school plans, guidance, and recommendations during the COVID-19 pandemic. I had hoped to begin my first year as the new superintendent with the virus more in our rearview mirror than the reality we are faced with today. We are all experiencing COVID fatigue and would like nothing more than to turn the page on this long and challenging journey we've been on. Unfortunately, the reality of the virus's Delta variant requires a more cautious approach. Last week, we shared our Reconnect and Refocus 2021 back-to-school plans, guidance, recommendations, and mitigation strategies. As expected, there were differing reactions and opinions. And while we may not all agree on the guidance and recommendations, it has become very clear from your passionate messages that we do share a common perspective. That is, we all want what's best for our students. Our guidance to start the school year prioritizes student and staff safety while balancing the importance of in-person schooling for the vast majority of students. For families who are not comfortable with in-person learning or discovered that online school works best for them, we offer New Code Academy, formerly Bloomington Online School, as a choice. I set forth a theme this year that is centered on three words: reconnect, refocus, and relationships. Reconnecting students with their classmates and friends, their teachers and school staff, teammates and coaches, all of whom are part of developing and nurturing their love for learning and growing. Refocusing on who we are as a school system of incredibly talented teachers, support staff, and leaders, and what we do best in our service to students, parents, caregivers, and each other as colleagues. And relationships. When we meet students' educational, social, and emotional needs, we can spark motivation, engagement, and a love for learning. When students experience healthy relationships with their peers and teachers, they are nurtured in their own sense of self and identity, and they are motivated to learn and achieve. They have a strong sense of belonging, and they know they matter. Tonight, we welcome district and school leaders to share more on our plans, guidance, recommendations, and strategies to start the school year. Working together, we are a stronger school system and community. Now, here's Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Jenna Mitchler, to kick off tonight's community engagement event.
Thank you, Superintendent Melby. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We truly appreciate you tuning in to this tonight, our 6th live virtual community engagement event. So thanks for being here with us. We've hosted these periodic events to inform and educate our stakeholders on COVID-19 related learning models, social emotional wellness, recommendations around social emotional wellness, early childhood, childcare, and of course, mitigation and prevention strategies. Additionally, these events provide you as parents and students and staff an opportunity to seek clarity through posing questions to us. Hearing from our stakeholders truly is a key part of creating the most safe and supportive school system that we possibly can. And we value your feedback in doing that work because it helps to strengthen our schools. So please continue to share with us. So here we are on the threshold of a new school year amidst this lingering pandemic. And as Dr. Melby shared, we certainly expected to begin this year in a way different than the way we began last year. In most cases, this is true. So we will continue to adopt new practices and adapt to our current situation and the challenges that we face. For more than a year, the state's Safe Learning Plan, part of Governor Walz's executive emergency order, provided specific guidance for school districts. That guidance was based on how widespread coronavirus cases were in communities. When the last of the emergency orders expired in July, the Safe Learning Plan's mandated guidance for public schools came to an end. Today, School districts receive recommended guidance from the CDC, the Minnesota Department of Health, and the Minnesota Department of Education. In essence, the guidance are recommendations, and they're not mandates. As such, districts have local control over their back-to-school plans and their COVID prevention strategies. However, this also poses for us a bit of a tightrope walk because we are trying to develop layered strategies, prevention strategies, with a focus on that primary goal that we have of keeping our students and our staff safe and physically present in schools as much as we absolutely can. Tonight, we welcome school and district staff to provide details for students for our returning to in-person learning, for those opting to attend New Code Academy, formerly the Bloomington Online School, or BOS, and our early childhood and childcare students. We're going to provide updated layered prevention strategies and welcome back one of our school psychologists who's going to help us discuss social emotional well-being and help us better understand what we as school staff and you as parents and caregivers can do to help our children succeed in school this year. Our presenters tonight are Jessica Shanik, she's a teacher at Indian Mounds Elementary School, Timothy Shivari, who's principal at Olson Middle School, Rebecca Brower, our assistant principal at New Code Academy, Kim Lloyd, our school psychologist at Kennedy High School, Hannah Hatch, our Director of Health Services, and Sarah Moline, our Director of Early Childhood and Youth and Family Services. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to remind everyone that if you have questions that you'd like to ask our team live tonight, please go to the link on your screen. And that link is bit.ly/reconnect-refocus-questions. As with our past events, we've received a lot of feedback from our families and our staff, and we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible that have come up in the last few days and that we receive here tonight during our presentation and following our presentation. And then we'll use the remaining time to make sure that we are answering as many of those questions that continue to come in as possible. So with that, we're going to begin our presentation for you tonight, and I'll hand things over to Jessica Shanik. Jessica?
Hello, Bloomington families. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jessica Shank. I teach second grade at Indian Mounds Elementary. This will be my 19th year teaching. I also live in Bloomington, and I have 10-year-old twins, and they attend Normandale Hills Elementary, and they'll be in 5th grade this year. I was asked to be here to share my perspective as a teacher, and I thought a lot about it, and I wanted to share a few things quickly before touching on all of the elements on the slide. Some of the things I thought about were as a parent, some of them were as a teacher. All of them were thoughts I had as we prepare to go back to school this fall. The first thing I'd like to share is that we, meaning school staff, we recognize and often share the anxiety, the fear, the frustration, the hope for normalcy, and those feelings that you are having are universal right now. We feel them too. Our role as school staff is to build another school year on a foundation with so much uncertainty again. Our role is to create the calm and the safe place where you send your kids every day to grow and develop for another school year. I'm lucky to have the dual perspective of being a parent and a teacher in Bloomington. And I also, not so luckily, am a worrier. I worry about everything you could possibly worry about. And I realize that the one thing I'm not worried about this school year is how the teachers will take care of my kids. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the virus. I'm worried about the issues that come with that. But I do have complete confidence in the remarkable people who take care of my kids every day as a parent. And I do that for other families as a teacher every day. And I know what it's like. And we're up for it. We always have been, and we always will be. Finally, then I'll get to the slide. Touchy-feely. We all understand that you as families are sending pieces of your heart walking around in school without you protecting them. And we feel that responsibility. We know that responsibility. And we're so grateful for your trust, your honesty, and your support as we tiptoe into another year of uncertainty. We're here for you. We're going to make it safe, productive, maybe even fun, and we will all be working together. So, quickly to the slides. All elementary students will be back in school 5 days a week in person. The things we're going to be focusing on, the elementary level, are connection and community, and this is all about belonging. We spend the first 6 weeks of school learning about each other and building relationships. That's part of our curriculum. Everyone needs and deserves to belong. Structure and consistency in our classrooms. We are building structure and consistency into the school day. This helps the students relax, they know what to expect, and they can reserve their brain power for learning rather than trying to anticipate what's going to come next. Things at school are safe and they're predictable. Reset and refocus from the various school experiences. As you know, kids are coming back to school with many unique experiences. We've had distance learning. Some went to private schools, some did homeschools, some did hybrid, some did in-person, some went back to hybrid, back to in-person. It's been a little bit of everything, and we realize those are the experiences that are walking into our classrooms. To give a little perspective, I teach second grade, as I had said. There will be students in my class, in all second grade classes this year, who have never experienced a school year without the impacts of COVID. This is their reality, and this is what they know. Pretty resilient little guys and gals. So we take the time to learn about your child's experiences, where they've been, where they need to go, and we meet them where they are. Students will return to school with varied academic levels. This is natural and this is expected. This connects right back to the reset and refocus with so many different school experiences. Some students have made great academic progress. Some students have not. We are here for you either way. Please take our permission, parents, families, caregivers, to let go of the stress about what your child may have missed through all of this. Everyone missed something. Everyone did. The teachers, we are not worried about where your child is academically coming into this school year and what they may have missed in their prior year. That's not where we're at. We are here for them, meet them where they are at, and take it from there. Which also leads into the differentiation piece. Teachers will differentiate their instruction to reach students at their instructional levels. So differentiation is an educational term we use that basically means the teacher works with the student. We figure out what they can do independently in math and reading and all of the different areas. And then we begin to work on the next skills that they need in order to advance and continue with the more difficult skills. The Bloomington curriculum, especially with math and reading, naturally lends itself to this differentiation. It's just how we've taught. This isn't something new. We aren't going to be confused as to what to do with kids if they are behind or missing things. We do this all the time. A quick example, in a typical fall, students entering second grade, reading level-wise, there will be students who are still learning their letters and sounds in second grade. There will be students who are working on first grade sight words in second grade. There will be students who are reading early second grade books. There will be students who are reading third or fourth grade, perhaps. This is commonplace. This isn't anything new or different. We know what to do, and we're ready to meet you where you're at. So please don't, there's enough else to stress about in this world. We can control how we teach at school, and we know what we're doing. Yeah, moving to the last one. It'll be all in-person learning. In-person learning is priority. We are not doing hybrid or distance. That's not allowed anymore. It's not an option. If your child is sick with COVID or anything else or quarantining, the plan is you'll log into Seesaw each day that your child is absent and check in and do some assignments on there. There'll be lots of communication with teachers through Seesaw. It's a work in progress. This whole year is. Every day is just something new. So the plan, we will have you covered. You will have plenty to do at home via Seesaw. I believe that I've covered it. I will pass it on to Mr. Tim Chavari, principal at Olson Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm Tim Chavari. I'm the principal at Olson Middle School. Thank you for joining us tonight. I just want to say we're all excited, very excited to have everybody back for the beginning of the year, 5 days a week in person. Last year, when we returned in the spring, the overwhelming sentiment of teachers and staff was they were extremely excited to be back in person to see students and to get to know them better and to develop the relationships that we know are so important to student success. You know, we go into education because we love kids and because we want to be there to guide kids to success in life. And that sentiment of being excited to see kids in person is just as true today as it was when we returned back in the spring. We also understand the need for consistency for our kids. Distance learning was difficult for our students as well as our staff when it came to delivering the academic content as well as getting to know each other and developing those important relationships. And again, that's why we are excited to be providing that 5-day in-person school experience for our students. Now, as Jessica said, there won't be a hybrid and there will not be distance learning or concurrent teaching option as we move through the year. We also understand, however, that some students may be out due to COVID positive case or due to quarantine. With that said, students will have access to their courses in Canvas. Teachers will be aware of which students will be out, and they'll be available to our students to ensure that our kids get the academic needs met that they have. Our secondary schools also either already have staff or have added staff in place to help our students throughout the day. We know a teacher schedule is often very tight. And so we're providing a person for our students, people for our students, to act as a point person if they are out on quarantine or if they're out for an extended period of time. And these people will be available throughout the day for students to connect with should they have any type of question, whether it be academic, social emotional, mental health. These folks will be there to help assist our kids and help guide them through their learning and through their day as needed. We also understand that, again, distance learning, being home, was difficult for many kids. We have many students that have not been in a classroom since March of 2020. I have 2 children who are in that situation, who are returning to school this coming week. and are returning under significant anxiety and wondering what it's going to be like. My son said to me, "I'm worried because I don't know if I'll remember the process of going from class to class." So we understand that need, and we understand the need for a soft landing for our students who are in that situation, and we've prepared for that. We have staff who will be connecting with families as we move into this upcoming week to ensure that our students who are returning after a full year of being gone are getting what they need. We also understand that we need to care for the mental health of all of our students. As such, again, we have added staff, be it counseling or licensed therapists, to our buildings to assist in those needs. And that, that mental health care can look like anything from the caring teacher who's flexible and understanding and helps with the initial transition of a student and gets them off the ground and moving, to caring for the very specific needs of students through therapy multiple times in a week. And so we're prepared for that. We understand that that's a reality for our kids. In all of this, again, we are excited to have kids back 5 days a week, to see them develop the relationships that we know are so important to their well-being. Thank you. I'll now pass it off to Rebecca Brower, Assistant Principal of New Code Academy.
Thank you, Tim. I'm honored to be here today and have the opportunity to tell you about New Code Academy. We're an excellent online option for Bloomington Public School students, kindergarten through 12th grade. Our school focuses on community. We believe that relationships precede learning, and based on that belief, we focus on building relationships between our students and between our teachers and students. We also believe in dynamic learning, meaning a balance of on-screen and off-screen learning while keeping students' minds and bodies active throughout the day. Another focus is that of computer science. We focus on computer science to help develop the thinking and problem-solving skills that our students require now and in their future. I have an example of an elementary school schedule, and you can see that the day begins and ends with a morning meeting and a closing meeting. This is our focus on community and relationships, and as check-in for social emotional. You'll also notice a mix of whole group instruction and differentiated instruction, which is meant to meet our students where they are academically, and something that our second grade teacher, Ms. Schenk, talked about. You'll also notice interdisciplinary units that were created by our Bloomington Public School teachers in order to help students connect their learning from subject to subject and to real-world situations in their lives. These units were based on Minnesota grade level standards and align with the Bloomington Public School essential standards. The last thing I want to point out is the support for families built in at the end of the day. You can see there are one-on-one check-ins for students and families so that we can provide the support needed for your child on an individual basis. The next slide shows a sample schedule of a New Code Academy middle school student. Much like elementary, we open each day in advisory. We call it launch, to launch the day together. We build community, we develop relationships, and beyond that, we teach the skills necessary and that are necessary and essential to becoming a successful online learner. We don't expect students to show up knowing how to do school online. We teach them, and we offer support throughout the year and throughout the day. If you notice, our core classes, math, science, social studies, and language arts, are the same courses that you would see in our other three Bloomington Public School middle schools. We also offer 2 specialists per day Students will have computer science, art, and health rotating on a quarterly basis. Music and Phy-Ed will rotate on a daily basis, A day and B day, so that students will have Phy-Ed and music all year long. I'd also like to point out the support that we built into the schedule. We have something called academic seminar each day right before lunch. This is an opportunity for our teachers to hand select students that they would like to work with. It might be one-on-one, it might be a small group. They may be working on an enrichment project, or they may need to target some extra support in a concept or something that they are working through with the whole class. We have it built in every day so that multiple teachers have access to students so that they can offer as much support as needed. The other support that's built into our middle school schedule sits at the end of the day and offers an opportunity for students to check in and talk one-on-one with their teachers about how they're doing, where do they need more help, and offer guidance. New Code Academy High School has two options. You could either be a full-time New Code Academy high school student, which means all of your classes are taken online, or you might be a part-time New Code Academy student, which means you're taking one or more online courses to complement your in-school experience at Kennedy or Jefferson. The full-time students will have an assigned to a partner school. So you'll either be partnered with Jefferson or Kennedy, and that allows those students to access support from the counselors and the support staff at both of those schools. It also offers an opportunity for extracurricular activities through the high school, giving your student the chance to participate in those things that we often think of going along with being a high school student. Our full-time classes are offering the widest selection that we could. We do offer a pathway to graduation, meaning that any student that becomes a full-time student in high school will have the courses offered to them that they need to continue on their path to graduation. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kim Lloyd, our lead school psychologist.
Thank you. So my name is Kim Lloyd. I've been a school psychologist in Bloomington now this will be my 17th year. I'm losing count. Just like Jessica, I also have a student who attends Bloomington Public Schools as an elementary schooler, so I've had my parent brain on this as well as my school psychologist brain on this. I'm excited to talk about our social emotional supports when we return to school. As I look at this next slide we have here, they notice it starts with ongoing concerns, which are all super valid. I want to take 1 second to take a breather and say, besides concerns, we're excited. I am so excited to be back, starting our school year full-time. I'm excited that all of our levels have that as an option, as well as a great online option for people that want that as a choice. I'm excited for the planning that Bloomington has done, and I'm excited for that as a parent and as a staff member. We do still have that continued experience of significant impact from all of the traumatic events over the past couple of years. And so as we return, we'll take things slow and have grace with one another and be kind. Our students have had various levels of exposure and awareness to the news and events. So the impact of all of this is still very different, individual to individual. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all best approach to how to support social emotional learning with our students. We go into this with the belief that people are doing the best they can given the circumstances, and we'll move from there. What we do know, and we've talked about this, our teachers and administrators have done such a good job of this, I don't need to read every item on this. Our students need connection, and I'm excited to see them connect as we start the school year. We are starting at a lower capacity due to chronic fatigue, and by we, I mean staff, students, parents. It has been a lot to take in over the past year to 2 years of everything that has happened. We need to keep working on emotional regulation because it helps our kids to be ready to learn. Some students might adjust really easy to returning to school. Some of them are just so excited to be back full-time and adjust to the routine. And for some of our students, especially the young ones, this has been kind of their normal. They haven't known a year without COVID. And so some of our students will probably jump into the routine of school pretty easily. Students pick up on our emotions, so thinking about, in addition to our concerns and worries, what the positives are, what we're excited for our kids, for everybody at school. The routines and structure that have already been talked about will help students feel safe and ready to learn. And then we all need time to transition and redefine our new normal. It will take us a little bit to get a feel for what's working, what's not, how everyone's responding. So just giving it time is important. We presented this list, I think, a very similar list in the spring last year as some of the students returned to school, but we'll see some of these same behaviors and emotions. As I was looking at this today and thinking more about it, I remember even when my son started school the first time as a kindergartner a couple years back. And that first week of school, some of these things are pretty common anyway. Kids are changing their sleep schedules after summer. They're getting back into a routine. They're doing academic work for the first time. They've got all the social stuff happening that wasn't going on before. So kids are tired and distractible that first week. That's normal. It might be a little more intense following a year of distance learning and hybrid classes and all of the transitions of last year. So we would expect some of these things, like the emotional extremes, difficulty with the transition, some of that social regression and immaturity. Some of us are still feeling a lot of grief about some of the things we felt we've lost or that our students have lost. So thinking about how we can support the behaviors and emotions of our students. We want to continue to take things slow, give time for our students to connect with each other, with their teachers, to just reconnect to the school environment. We're going to start where the students are and take their lead. We want to help students focus on the positives and what they can control. So I know, like, back in July, talking to people, it sounded like no masks, we're going back to school, it's going to be so close to normal. I was super excited for me, for my son. And then watching that shift as we've gotten, as the Delta variant has changed things for us, as we've gotten new guidance from the CDC, from the Department of Health, thinking, it's going back, we're having some things still that are different this year. We can still think about the positives. It's still exciting to be back 5 days a week at the start of the school year. It's still exciting for our kids to be seeing each other and having recess together and moving forward with all of that. There's a lot of the regular fall school things to be excited about, and embracing those and thinking about those and focusing on them is going to be helpful with the transition. We want to validate the emotions that our kids are feeling and normalize them. We want to model how to handle things. So if we're feeling stressed, saying it out loud to our kiddos and telling them how we feel and telling them how we're solving it. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a breath. Let's think through this. Let's work on calming down. That's okay to do and model for our kids. It's helpful. Allowing for breaks at school. We'll incorporate physical activity, social activities, quiet breaks. Those routines and expectations, reviewing those frequently is really helpful. And then allowing our students to reset and restart. It might take them a while to get the routine down. So they might need to reset and restart each day, each hour, every 10 minutes for a little while till it gets to be their new normal. We have mental health supports within all of our buildings. So at the secondary level, middle school and high school, we have counselors, social workers, school psychologists available. Early childhood and elementary have social workers and school psychologists available. At the secondary level, so middle school and high school, that counselor is the point person if you have questions about your student's social, emotional functioning or mental health. Those counselors can refer to the school psychologists, social workers, or other outside agencies for additional support. At the elementary level, the starting point would be the classroom teacher, and they can consult with you on how your student's doing, and then also refer to the school psychologist or social worker, as well as helping find additional support with those people if your student is struggling. To families and caregivers, students will take our lead. So we need to lead with compassion, flexibility, positivity, and our students are going to follow. There continue to be a lot of unpredictable variables, so we'll keep acknowledging feelings and helping students focus on things they can control. Sometimes adults are grieving or reacting differently than students. Sometimes it's harder for us because we know what the normal was before, and it feels like a loss to have kids have school be a little different than it was before, where our students don't always know that the same way we do. So just take care of yourself. If you need help, please reach out. Our capacity changes over time. Sometimes we can take on all sorts of stress and be the person that supports everybody in the home, and sometimes we need to be the one supported. Do your best in each moment. You're appreciated, cared about, and supported by our school staff and our district mental health providers. Thank you. I'm going to now pass it over to Hannah Hatch, who is our Director of Health Services.
Thanks, Kim. Good evening. I'm Hannah Hatch. I am the Director of Health Services and Co-COVID-19 Coordinator. This COVID update will focus primarily on the development of and guidance for our back-to-school plans, including the decision-making factors and the key layered mitigation and prevention strategies that are outlined in our Reconnect and Refocus Back-to-School 2021 plan. I want to first take a moment to acknowledge the tremendous assistance we've received from Bloomington Public Health Administrator Dr. Nicholas Kelly, whom we meet with each week to discuss, strategize, and receive updates. And thank you to the members of our pandemic response team who have been instrumental in the development of our recommendations and guidance provided to parents and staff last week. It is important to note as we go through the following recommendations that we are in some cases we are following, and in some cases we are exceeding the CDC and Minnesota Department of Health recommendations with respect to their layered or multiple prevention strategies. Our COVID-related work throughout this last 18 months has been guided by our complete concern and care for the mental and physical well-being of our students and staff. That has been our primary focus and will continue to be throughout this year. While we have not wavered in this commitment and relentless pursuit, we know that the reality is that we will not meet every family's need or expectations this year. What also has become very clear in the data from our surveys of parents and staff, conversations and comments is the importance of in-person learning school for the majority of our students this year. The CDC highlights the importance of in-person connection for the development of every child. The connections formed through in-person interaction are crucial to the social and emotional development of children, especially for children with behavioral or other developmental needs. This has become our primary goal. Students safely returning to in-person instruction, and for those families who are not comfortable with in-person learning or who have discovered that online school works best for them, we are excited for year 2 of New Code Academy, which was formerly Bloomington Online School. The other key factors in determining recommendations and guidance include ongoing monitoring of Bloomington and Hennepin County transmission data, vaccination coverage of our 12 to 15 and 16 to 18-year-olds, family feedback from our families and staff, and with the assistance of Bloomington Public Health, the available science on the Delta variant. We have learned that the Delta variant acts like a large wave. It washes over a community, results in higher cases of predominantly unvaccinated people before it takes a sharp decline. It should be noted that we are seeing good trends in the case data over this past week, and local and state public health officials are growing more and more confident that we may have reached the peak with the Delta variant. This does not mean that it is a time to relax our mitigation strategies, as we fully expect that the recommendations we're sharing this evening will be in place for the start of the school year and foreseeable future. As you've heard, we've been purposeful in establishing current guidance, including 2 newly revised recommendations we will share shortly in respect to mask wearing. As noted, our guidance emphasizes implementing layered prevention strategies together consistently. There is no one sure mitigation strategy that completely prevents the spread of COVID-19, which is why we are stressing, and have been all along, a multiple layered approach to our mitigation. We will maintain this practice and improve and modify it as we can, and have continued to do that with state and federal public health recommendations. The first thing in our layered mitigation strategies is vaccinations. We continue to partner with Bloomington Public Health to offer vaccinations and encourage the walk-ins at the Mall of America. There's then ventilation. Our medical-grade HEPA filters purify 99.9% of airborne particles. School air handling units have been set to maximize outdoor air for increased ventilation and inspected to enhance optimal performance. Masks. Masks are recommended for all students and staff indoors, regardless of vaccination status. As I will share, we not only meet this recommendation, but we will exceed it with requiring certain individuals to use masks. Staying home when sick. This is a critical and necessary mitigation strategy to stop the spread. If you are unsure, we recommend getting tested. I'm excited to share that Bloomington Public Health has been working with the Minnesota Department of Health to expand testing capacity here in Bloomington. Physical distance. We do acknowledge that last spring, when all students returned to school, the 3 feet of physical distance was not practical in several settings. But to the extent possible, we do want to do our best to spread students out as much as possible. We've also encouraged principals and teachers to get classes outside, including lunch when the weather is nice this fall. This was one of the primary reasons we saw very little transmission and very few positive cases among our summer school students this year, despite more than double the elementary student participants. And lastly, we will continue to practice proper hygiene and encourage hand washing and the use of hand sanitizer. I'll now go a little bit more in depth into how we are utilizing those mitigation strategies specifically here in Bloomington. The first mitigation strategy I want to cover is masks. As a reminder, we believe that all of these mitigation strategies layered together are what will provide the best protection. And we looked at and considered all of the mitigation strategies together when making some of these decisions. As you probably have heard, the CDC has recommended that all people wear masks while indoors, regardless of vaccination status. Again, that is our recommendation this year. In addition to that, we will be requiring masks for early childhood students through grade 6. They will be required to wear masks inside all district facilities. We will be providing exemptions for students through the IEP process and when they need a medically required exemption. Our children or students who are birth to 2 years will not be required to wear masks in any situation, as it is not recommended or safe for that age group. Our students in grades 7 through 12 will be strongly recommended to wear masks while indoors or in district buildings. All staff, early childhood through 12th grade, will be required to wear a mask if they cannot maintain 6 feet of social distance from students. They will also be required to wear a mask in high occupancy areas. For example, the cafeteria or auditorium would be an example of a high occupancy area where we would ask that they place a mask on. Staff who are fully vaccinated and who can maintain physical distance in the school setting may remove their mask if they're working in their office alone, or if staff need to remove their mask to provide instruction for students and can maintain that distance, that would be an appropriate time to do so. One federal requirement that we have is that all students and staff are required to wear face coverings while on public transportation. School buses and district vehicles are considered public transportation. Therefore, all of our students and staff will be required to wear a mask on buses or if they're utilizing our transportation vehicles. We will now move to the mitigation of health screening. This mitigation strategy is a critical mitigation strategy in preventing the spread of COVID-19. Last year, through our extensive contact tracing, we realized quickly that this was a crucial mitigation strategy. We are asking that parents perform a daily health screening of their child prior to sending them to school. Any students exhibiting any signs or symptoms of illness should be kept home. Students who become ill while at school will be required to go home. Parents will be notified, and the expectation will be that they pick up their child within a timely manner. Symptomatic students and staff, regardless of vaccination status, will need to go home if they are experiencing symptoms or test positive for COVID-19. They will be allowed to return to school if they meet one of the following 3 criteria. They have a negative COVID-19 test, they receive an alternative diagnosis from a provider, or they complete a 10-day isolation from the point that their symptoms begin. All staff will also be required to perform daily health screenings and stay home if ill. Again, we feel that this is a crucial mitigation strategy. Oftentimes, at the beginning of COVID, symptoms can be very mild and mimic a lot of different things. So we are asking that parents and staff do a screening prior to coming into the school buildings and stay home if any symptoms are present. Next, we will cover isolation, quarantines, and contact tracing. Another federal requirement on schools is that we do report any positive cases of staff or students to the Minnesota Department of Health. We will continue to report any positive cases that we are aware of to the Minnesota Department of Health, and any positive cases will be required to isolate for 10 days from the onset of symptoms. Parents must notify the school if their child is symptomatic or tests positive. We will be notifying parents and staff who have been exposed to a positive case. This year, we will not be requiring them to automatically quarantine, but we will be asking that anyone exposed monitor for symptoms and get tested 3 to 5 days from exposure. The same guidance will be followed whether they are vaccinated or not and exposed to a positive case. Unvaccinated siblings or household members will be required to quarantine for 7 days with a negative COVID test between day 5 and 7, or for 10 days without a COVID-19 test. The reason household members will be asked to quarantine if a household member is positive is because they will have had very high risk exposure to the positive individual. When necessary, we will be completing thorough contact tracing to keep classrooms and buildings safe. Quarantines may be necessary this year if an outbreak occurs in a classroom, team, or group, and we will continue to monitor the positive cases, where they are taking place, and what the best practice is. Next is testing and vaccinations. Testing is recommended for anyone who is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. We also encourage regular testing for unvaccinated students and staff or anyone who is participating in higher risk activities, such as a close higher risk team sport or close contact extracurricular activity. Vaccinations are not required this year. Immunization is noted as the single most effective preventative intervention. The greater the eligible population is vaccinated, it will dramatically reduce the infection rate among unvaccinated. According to CDC and MDH, COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective, and millions of people have received the vaccines under the safety monitoring taking place. Lastly, I will address volunteers and visitors. All approved volunteers through Volunteer Connection and Minnesota Department of Health must be fully vaccinated before working in our schools this year. Elementary school visitors and parent volunteers are going to be restricted to start the year. There is an exception that the early assessment days taking place in elementary schools, we will be allowing parents and students to come in, but we will ask that masks are worn. Unvaccinated people visiting secondary schools are required to wear a mask or face covering, and all visitors will be required to sign in at the visitor's log because this will support our contact tracing if there are positive cases. Lastly, of note, all of the current recommendations may be adjusted at a building or district level depending on case counts or virus outbreaks. We will continue to monitor this and continue to watch our numbers and be in contact with Bloomington Public Health and the Minnesota Department of Health around our COVID-19 guidance. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Early Learning and Youth and Family Services Director, Sarah Moline.
Thank you, Hannah. Good evening. My name is Sarah Moline, and I serve as the Early Learning and Youth and Family Services Director. I will begin speaking about the Early Childhood Program plans and then share about the Kids Safari Care. Early Childhood Family Education, ECFE, and Early Childhood Special Education, ECSE, classes will be offered in person. Some virtual classes, such as evening parent education options, are available. For parent drop-off and pickup, or adults attending these programs are all required to wear a face covering and a mask while indoors. Next, our early childhood screening, ages 3 through 5. In-person screenings are back open at the Pond Center. Variety of appointments are available, including day, evening, and Saturday options. Early childhood screening is a required developmental check, and an exit interview will take place to discuss findings about your individual child and any referrals prior to kindergarten. Screenings are available in English, Spanish, and Somali. Next, our 3s and 4s preschool. In-person programs at Pond and Southwood Early Childhood Centers and elementary schools are planned. Offerings include 2, 3, and 5-day-a-week 3-year-old preschool and 5-day-a-week 4-year-old preschool. Preschool classes all run 2.5 hours, either in the morning or in the afternoon. We will follow the Reconnect and Refocus 2021 back-to-school plan guidance and recommendation. Parent drop-off and pickup will require face coverings or a mask while entering the building for these programs. There is an online preschool option available through our early learning services. Preschool Safari, formerly Early Learning Academy, preschool class is 2.5 hours, 5 days a week. Mixed age class of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, which is a creative learning experience and enrichment activities daily. And then there is before and after preschool wraparound care available. Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to the preschool class, and then preschool class until 6 p.m. In-person programs this year will be hosted at Hillcrest, Normandale Hills, Poplar Bridge, and Westwood Elementary Schools. We will focus on the Reconnect and Refocus 2021 back-to-school plan and guidance and recommendations for these programs as well. Parent drop-off and pickup also require a face covering or mask when entering the building. Next, Kids Safari, the before and after school district childcare. This will run Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. till the start of school, and then from school dismissal until 6 p.m. This year, 7 elementary school sites will host the before and after care: Hillcrest, Ridgeview, Olson, Westwood, Oak Grove, Poplar Bridge, and Normandale Hills. Consolidation of these sites is truly due to our staff shortage and the need to maintain a 1-to-15 ratio. Indian Mounds and Valley View students will go to Oak Grove for care. Washburn students will go to Normandale Hills. We will continue to work through our waiting list for Kids Safari as we are able. We will follow the Reconnect and Refocus 2021 back-to-school plan guidance and recommendation for Kids Safari. Parent drop-off and pickup require a face covering or mask when entering the building. We are planning for an excellent year of learning together. And this concludes my time and my portion of my information. I'll now turn it back over to Dr. Jenna Mitchler. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing that very thorough information with our families in response to a lot of the questions that we've received prior to tonight. So right now, we have about 25 minutes remaining, so I'm going to pose a couple of questions to our panelists. These are questions that have come in tonight during our presentation, and some of which have come in before the presentation tonight. Please note, we've received a lot of feedback and a lot of questions, so we may not get to every single one of our questions tonight, but we will do our best to respond to those questions that aren't covered this evening. Our Community Relations Department will continue to respond to questions that are not addressed as well. All right, so let's get started with questions. I'm going to answer the first question that I have here tonight, which is there any discussion about the possibility of providing a distance learning option at our schools? So I just want to make sure it's clear to our viewing audience that the Safe Learning Plan has expired with Governor Walz's emergency order, and therefore school districts in the state of Minnesota are not able to provide distance learning for the school year this year. We are very fortunate in Bloomington Public Schools to have a fully certified school through the Department of Education that is an online school, and that's our New Code Academy. All right, I'll move on to some of the other questions then as well. So this first question, I'm going to pass over to Jessica Shank first, and then I'll send it also over to you, Tim, to help us with a response. The question is, when a student is required to stay home due to an infectious illness, awaiting test results, or quarantine, or they have symptoms, what is the district's plan for providing instruction on those days? So Jessica, could you help us first with the elementary level?
Yes, absolutely. If children are out with illness, you'll log into Seesaw each day that you're out and check for your classwork there. You can also communicate, parents and students can also communicate directly with the teacher via Seesaw.
Yeah, and at the secondary level, again, we want to ensure that our students get a quality education even when they're out. And so students would log in to Canvas to access their courses. They will have opportunities to connect with their teachers should they have questions. We do understand that, again, a teacher's schedule can be tight given that they're teaching. So we will provide a point person for our students whom they can connect with throughout the day as immediate needs arise. And that point person can then help facilitate the academic needs for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you for that. To be clear, for any families who are new to our district or transitioning between levels, Seesaw and Canvas is our online platform that houses the materials that staff use to instruct our students. So that'll all be accessible to students if they're not able to attend school. All right, the next question I'm going to send over to Kim, you. This is related to social emotional wellness. It's a question that came in before the presentation tonight. The question reads, what kind of psychological effect will masking have on our son? He's already nervous about going to kindergarten, and now he has to do that without being able to see new kids and teachers' faces.
Right, that is a good question because I think it's something, especially for parents of kindergartners, that is on a lot of people's minds just because it is something a little bit different. We're still learning the full ongoing impact on the social emotional needs connected with the pandemic and masking. What we do know is that our Bloomington community shares a common goal of raising and educating kids to grow up experiencing joy and success. And one of the best opportunities for that seems to be creating a setting where schools can stay open for in-person instruction, which right now does involve masking. We've talked about this a little, but for a lot of our younger students, this really has been part of their normal. If they've been in a daycare setting, out in public places, for our students that have gone through kinder and first grade and are heading into second, all of them have had a situation or many situations where they've had masks on for a lot of the time. So it has become relatively normal. Our kids have been incredibly resilient with it. It's a way of keeping our kids healthy and keeping them in school. One of the things that I think about, and I've heard other people talk about, is that the transitions in and out of school, the distance learning, all of that unpredictability last year had more of a social emotional impact than wearing a mask and being able to consistently be in school might have. There will be opportunities for kids to see their teachers and other classmates without masks also, at times perhaps when they're outside at recess, outside for gym activities, lunch, things like that. So there are ways that kids will get that social emotional, seeing everyone's full face. Our teachers, just like Jessica said, I have all the faith in the world that our kids are in great hands. Our teachers have watched our students adjust and have seen what cues and support kids need to be successful. They can help offer tips to families too about what maybe makes that transition to masks easier. It might help to practice for students who are nervous to wear their masks for a little bit longer duration if they're not accustomed to it after summer or at all. And it might help if there's an opportunity to experiment with the size of mask and making sure it fits if your student has glasses or anything that might adjust it. We also will have masks at schools, at the school sites, but sending a second or third mask, I know I do that with my son a lot, because sometimes throughout the day, their first mask gets a little uncomfortable, or they sneeze in it, or things like that. So those are different pieces that can kind of help. You could also joke around just a little bit and make it a positive. I know my son points out things like, you don't have to, it's easier when you sneeze because you have a mask on, or you don't have to smell everybody else's breath, or they can't see if there's something in your nose or on your teeth. So, making a little bit of fun with it might also be a strategy to get your student more excited about or more okay with wearing a mask.
Great. Thank you, Kim. All right, we have a couple of questions that have just come in, so I'm going to ask these questions of you, Hannah. The first one is in reference to something you just said earlier during your presentation, and the question is, what should the parents do before kids go to school besides just looking for symptoms? Should we be asking how they're feeling, taking their temperatures? What does that look like at home?
That's a great question. One of the things I would recommend is exactly what is suggested in the question, is to check in with your kids prior to sending them to school. So ask them, how are they feeling? Temperatures can be a great indication. As you remember, at the beginning of the pandemic, several places were screening temperatures, but later found out that was a little bit harder to control because in Minnesota with cold weather or extremely warm weather, forehead temperatures were a little bit variable. However, in your home in the morning when they wake up would be a great time to check their temperature. Another thing is just in pediatrics, what I always recommend for my nurses is to really pay attention to what you're observing and seeing with your student prior to them coming to school. Are they acting especially tired? Are they looking especially pale? And just make sure you're observing their normal behavior as to whether or not they are feeling ill or not. As I said before, when we have seen positive COVID cases and interviewed families or staff members, oftentimes they report very mild symptoms in the beginning, such as a runny nose or scratchy throat, feeling especially tired or a little bit achy. We understand these symptoms can mimic other things, but we also are asking for you to check in with your child and err on the side of caution if any symptoms are present. If they have multiple symptoms of COVID, we are asking that they do get tested. However, if they're maybe feeling tired that morning, it may be a situation where you keep them home for 24 hours to observe if there's more that's going on or if it's just a lack of sleep.
Thanks, Hannah. Hannah, I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. This is another question that just came in, so I want to make sure we get to it. The question is, if a vaccinated student is exposed to a positive case, do they have to quarantine or can they come just directly to school without a test?
That's a great question. If a fully vaccinated student or staff member is exposed to a positive case, the current recommendation is that they do not need to quarantine. They can still attend school, and we are not requiring a negative test. With that being said, the current recommendation also asks that if there is a known exposure to COVID-19, the vaccinated individual would wear a mask during the period that they are concerned about possible exposure, monitor closely for symptoms, and get tested if they feel they can 3 to 5 days after exposure, and get tested if any symptoms arise.
Great, thank you, Hannah. The next question goes to Assistant Principal Rebecca Brower from New Code Academy. And the question is, what's the difference between online school and New Code Academy?
Thank you. So I think what this is asking is what's the difference between the distance learning and New Code Academy. Specifically, New Code Academy is designed by teachers to be effective for online teaching and learning. We have a partnership with the University of Minnesota based on years of research. They have worked with us to redesign our instructional practices with online students in mind. Like I said, this is backed by years of their research, and we are entering our second year as a partnership with the University of Minnesota this year. I would say that another difference is that our support systems are also designed for online students, and this includes support for emerging bilingual or EL students, as well as students with special education services. There's a focus on the permanence of staying online instead of like a short-term online stint that you might think of when we were quarantined or went to distance learning. Teachers are deliberately teaching skills necessary to be successful online learners. And then I would say the last difference is that we have developed regular systems to get hands-on materials to our students to make sure there's a healthy balance of on-screen and off-screen learning.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. I have a question here about early childhood, so I'm going to ask you, Sarah, for help with that question. The question is, can we request or mandate a preschool or child care staff member be masked when in close contact with a high-risk child?
Thank you for the question. We certainly can request that a staff member wear a mask around a high-risk child. If this child needs to have someone taking extra precautions around them, that is appropriate. Please keep in mind that masking is just one of our mitigation strategies, and there are others that we can use. And so we're thinking of different ways to be effective, but we can certainly ask, yes.
Jenna, maybe I can add to that as well, because we recently had a little change or update in that any staff member in close proximity with students will be asked or required to mask this year. So that was a revision in our plan. And so the answer to that question is they will already be required to do so. But as Sarah said, we will be implementing multiple mitigation strategies in those classrooms, especially with our high-risk children. And also, if there's an additional request, we certainly can filter that through the team and figure out how we can support our students best. Thanks.
Thank you both. Great. Right, I have another question related to, I guess, what I would call academics specifically. So I'm going to first send this question over to you, Jessica, and then Principal Shivari, if you have more to add, that would be great too. So Jessica, the question is, are children going to bring home their Chromebooks every day? And I think this is in particular at the elementary level. And then if not, how will they be able to access Seesaw, for example, if they're homesick?
Excellent question. I was wondering the same thing. Yes, 2nd through 5th graders will bring home their Chromebooks. Kindergarten and 1st grade are not one-to-one in all elementaries, as far as I'm aware. I hope I'm not saying the wrong information, but that's my understanding. And also, two things. One thing I wanted to say was, if your child is sick at home, please don't stress about schoolwork. If your child is sick, just like the good old days, they need to be in bed, eating soup, drinking Gatorade, whatever. We're not worried about their academics at that point. If they're in quarantine, they're feeling fine, you're sort of frustrated, they're missing out, then that's when the seesaw piece will come into play. But if your child is sick at home, they need to truly feeling ill, they need to rest. The other piece was with Chromebooks. I know that last year if students left school and somehow forgot their Chromebook, it got left at school, they became ill, they were stuck at home in quarantine without the Chromebook, the school was able to coordinate with the family and you can get your Chromebook. So I know there'll be lots of different scenarios and we'll figure it out.
Thanks for that, Jessica. You're right. We certainly want students to be resting if they're ill, so I'm glad you said that. And yes, my experience too, just to reaffirm, has been that whenever there is a student who needs access to a Chromebook and maybe doesn't have one at home, our school staff have gone to lengths to try to make sure that those students, especially if they're out for some sort of an extended period of time, have access to those Chromebooks. So thanks for that. Tim, do you have anything to add?
Sure. At the secondary level, the expectation is that students will be bringing their Chromebooks home. We do this daily in any given year. And so students would have access. If they forget to bring the Chromebook home and they can't come in to get it, we would certainly figure out a way for students to get access to their academic work. I will say, if you have a student who's out for an extended period of time and you see that they're struggling, please do not hesitate to call your school and let us know as soon as possible. We want to make sure that kids are getting what they need.
Great, thank you for that. Kim, I'm going to ask you another question about social emotional wellness. So we have a lot of students, especially our really young students, coming into school maybe for the first time. And this is a question about kindergarten. And this parent says, my child's going to be coming to kindergarten this year. And since social and emotional development is a priority for Bloomington public schools and really important at this age, can you share more about how kindergarten classrooms will provide an effective environment for the skills students need following our district's COVID-19 distancing requirements?
Absolutely. And so thinking about that, because social emotional development is very important to us in Bloomington and across grade levels, but there's a strong look at how we incorporate that at the elementary in particular. The distancing requirements, the way I understand them, include staying, sometimes 3 feet apart or having distance when possible. Our kindergarten teachers, our kindergarten curriculum already includes a lot of the social emotional development embedded within it. That has been the case prior to COVID. It was the case even with our distance learning instruction. And we're excited to get back to being able to do that more consistently in person. Because that gives us more opportunity to have that really authentic instruction, but it is incorporated in all layers of our instruction, whether online, distance learning last year, or in person. The teachers do a great job of weaving that in lessons through books, games, videos, and other activities, so it's not all necessarily a kid right next to another kid doing an activity all the time. Over the course of the past year, our teachers have gotten really creative on different ways to provide examples and lessons that incorporate social emotional learning, so I have lots of confidence in them. Our district has given lots of training over the years on trauma-informed instruction and building connection and relationships. For students who are struggling more with those skill sets, our buildings also have student support teams that look at needs that go higher than that classroom level instruction too. So if a student really is struggling, reaching out and talking to their teacher and their teacher reaching out to that team for support are things that can happen to provide an even higher level of support for social emotional instruction as well. So that communication between home and school about concerns, I think, is probably a number one piece with this. If you're observing concerns at home, we maybe don't see the same thing in the school because some kids have a great skill set of holding it together. Talk with their teacher. We can work on building those skills. And if their teacher is seeing concerns in the classroom, they'll communicate also with parents to help, collaborate on how we can continue to build those skills across settings.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a a list of questions here that are related to seasonal allergies. So Hannah, maybe you can help us out. I'll give you a flavor of what some of these questions look like. So, we have seasonal allergies at our house. Can we diagnose it ourselves? Do we need a health practitioner to help us know that it is allergies? Symptoms like runny nose, sniffles, cough, mucus, watery eyes. Does my child have to stay home every time they experience that? Maybe you can help us out.
You bet. That's a great question and something that we dealt with frequently last year. As I mentioned before, we are aware that several symptoms of COVID-19 mimic a lot of other things we see. With that being said, we're also preparing for a fall that we may be seeing increased illnesses such as RSV, influenza, colds, things like that. One of the biggest concerns I got was with students who have underlying conditions, as this question is referring to, such as seasonal allergies, asthma, things like that. We are going to continue to follow the recommendations that MDH put out last year, which means if your child had a previous diagnosis of an underlying condition, such as asthma or allergies, our nurses will work with you to determine what their baseline is and go off of that. Now, there may be instances where we did not have in our system that they had a previous condition or their underlying condition is flaring up. Our nurses are then prepared to work with you to determine if this is something of concern, such as an increase in coughing, or something that typically is their baseline. If it is an underlying condition, we would not ask you to leave school every single time they exhibit symptoms. We may ask for documentation from their provider one time or talk with you if we're seeing an increase in symptoms, but our nurses are prepared to work with you with those known diagnoses for students. Thanks.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm going to try to get a couple more questions in here, but we have to wrap up in about 2 minutes with the questions. So briefly, Hannah, maybe could you just review with us, will classrooms be quarantined if a student tests positive? And are parents informed if quarantined classrooms in a building?
Sure. Another great question. So we will be doing this a little bit different this year. Last year, you may recall, if there was a positive case in elementary, we automatically quarantined the entire classroom. And if there was a positive case in secondary, we did some extensive work to quarantine everyone around that student. We will not be doing the automatic mass quarantines this year of classrooms. What we will be doing is quarantining any unvaccinated household members automatically, and then we will be doing a comprehensive interview with the positive individual and meeting as a COVID-19 team to determine the risk and who needs to quarantine. If your student was exposed but maybe doesn't necessarily need to quarantine, you will be notified, and you can always make that decision as a family to quarantine your student if you feel that is best. We will not be notifying the whole school if a classroom quarantines, but we will definitely be trying to keep parents as aware as possible. And like I said, if there is an exposure, we will be notifying families. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Hannah. We are out of time, so we need to wrap things up here tonight. I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for your interest, for your questions, for your concerns. We really, truly appreciate all of your feedback. Thank you to our presenters tonight and to our Office of Educational Equity translators who've been sharing tonight's presentation with our Spanish and Somali-speaking families. And thank you to everyone working behind the scenes at BEC-TV, bringing this event to you live tonight. Now it's my pleasure to introduce School Board Chair Nellie Corman to say a few closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Melby and Dr. Mitchler, and thank you to our principals and school leaders for your presentations and responses to the many questions we have received. Most importantly, we thank you, our families, students, and staff for joining us this evening. As has been the case throughout the pandemic, all decisions are made with a focus on safety, learning, and social-emotional health. We continue to work to achieve the right balance between these important goals. On behalf of the school board, I want to express our sincere thanks to district and school leaders, teachers, and support staff for your professionalism and dedication to our students and families. As a strong community, I know we're all doing our best to face the ongoing challenges of the pandemic together with patience and perseverance. We appreciate the trust you place in Bloomington Public Schools to provide a safe, quality educational experience for your children. Thank you and good night.